Here the shoulder connects to the bicep, and the inside of the bicep runs into the armpit. The armpit is right below where the shoulder and neck connect. So if I have the armpits right here under the shoulders, they are connected to the bust. So from here, rib cage will narrow slightly at the waist, yet come back out in time for the hip bone. Belly button at the waist. Her crotch is at 4.5. Give her a little bathing suit bottom. Give her a little bit of a top. Here, because the weight is on here, I'm going to shape the front of her thigh a little stronger, and her knee, and then cave in, curve inward for the shin, and put the weight, her weight, out on her calf. On this side, this leg is more relaxed, so I will not pop these out as much. But since it is a side view of the foot, whichever way the foot is facing is the way the knee is facing. So this will be a little bit more of like a 3/4 view of this knee, where this foot is in profile, so this knee will be in profile. So from the thigh, as I narrow down towards the knee, as I make the knee stick out in the front, it will curve in the back, and here will be my calf and my heel. For her arms, they are skinny, but the bicep is straight, the shoulder is round, the elbow is rounded, and the forearm is wider here at the top than at the wrist. So this is another taper. This is what's going to help your figure look a little more realistic. I'm going to take away some of these lines in here so you can see how her arm is shaping up with the foreshortening. And then we'll do the hands. For the hands, where the forearm connects with the hand is at the wrist. And at the wrist, the top of the hand flares out, meaning wider at the knuckle line than at the wrist. Here, I'm having her wrist go over her forearm to foreshorten it. And from the top of the hand where the knuckle line is, off the side of the top of the hand is where the thumb is. And where this knuckle line is are the other 4 fingers. So here, to draw her fingers here, each finger has 3 sections. And usually I will draw the top sections straighter, and the underneath will be a curve. This will help the finger have some shape. I also will show the fingernails at the end of that straight line to show which direction the fingers are pointing in. So on her, if I want her 1, 2, 3, this is how I'm going to put her fingers on top of her leg and show that they're going on her leg. And then underneath, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And they taper as well towards the point where the fingernail is. So wider at the top and smaller as you go down. And now for her hair, all hair is linear. Her hair is straight and it's coming from the crown of her head down. Up here she has a little bit of a part from where it's pulled into a ponytail. So I'm going to draw lines from where that part is to the side. If I darken at the part and darken where it's going, this will create a highlight across the head. And then her bangs are coming down off of that line towards her eyebrows. You can do the same thing here, where you can lightly fill in those lines, then go back at the start and also at the finish and darken it up, and this will create a highlight across her hair. A little bit back here you can see a little bit of her ponytail, but we could also bring a little bit more of the hair forward if you want to. Here in between the shoulders is the clavicle. The clavicle is at the bottom of her throat and is also connected to her collarbones. I usually will illustrate these because this is a good way to show direction for the neck and the shoulders. You can always use the clavicle and the collarbones to show which way a head is turning, or just to give a nice detail there at the end of the throat. I try to put little details all over the figure so that it helps it to look a little more dimensional and a little more realistic. We want the clothing to look 3D on the body as well, because it helps the person looking at it get an idea of how the clothing is going to look in real life. Drawing on the figure is a way that you communicate with your people about your ideas of fashion. Sometimes you can explain things, but if you're trying to sell outfits, what you're really going to do is communicate visually through your drawings. So now I'll take away all the gesture and narrow it down to just the lines that I want, and then we can give her some color. So now I'm going to put some color on my figure to help her look more dimensional. I'm going to use this reference because I like the light source that's on her. I like how warm and glowy she looks, and I want my figure to look 3D on the page. So to begin the shading, I'm going to use one of my lighter weight pencils because this will blend with my marker easily and not smudge like the thicker lead will. So under her chin, definitely, is my first shadow here to separate the neck from her jaw. Here on the sides of her face as well, if I shade here by the ear and at the side of the eye, this will help the cheekbone become more prominent. So I'll put a little bit of shading in here as well. Most of this will blend in after I hit it with a marker, but this is a good way for you to practice putting shading on, because then you can change it if it doesn't come out exactly how you like. So if I look at this reference, I can see that down one whole side of her is where the light is, and that basically the whole other side of her is in darkness. So if I start shading on one side of my figure, this is going to be the side that gets most of the shadow. You can even do this just evenly all the way down one side, whether you are becoming aware of the body parts or not, and it will still help your figure look dimensional. I always like to shade right at the edge of the figure as well to separate her even more from the page itself. Like here, if I put a little shadow under her fingers, it brings her hand a little bit up off of her leg, because things that are highlighted tend to come towards you, or things that are dark tend to recede, and this is what creates the illusion of dimension. I'll put a little bit down her arm, maybe even drop the shadow a little bit, taper it down onto her leg from her hand. I'll shadow under her crotch and taper that down to her knee, and a little bit under her hand here. I'm definitely going to shade on her forearm to bring this behind her hand, and I'll shade here a little bit at her elbow to bring this up under her armpit. The back of her thigh, under her knee, a little bit under her calf, and under her ankle. I'm also going to do this by using two different markers. It doesn't matter which colors that you use for flesh, unless you're doing specific nationality. But definitely get two colors that are close to each other. I can use the white of the page for the highlight, or if it's a darker flesh, like this girl is darker, so her highlight is not anywhere near white. Her highlight is near a light flesh because her shadows are really brown. I'm going to use two different flesh colors here. This light walnut is a little bit darker than the brick beige. So I'm going to put the darker one on first, just like I put the darker pencil on first, so that when I run over the whole thing with the lighter marker, everything will tend to blend together a little bit more. So first I'll use the fine point of the dark to go in here and put some shadow in around her eye. I'm going to use the pencil line that is there to smear this a little bit and create a look of that she's wearing makeup. I just run over the pencil line and blend it into the paper. With the fatter edge, I'm going to start dropping some shadows in. When you first have your markers, they're very full of ink. So try to touch the paper very lightly, and also as you're coloring, the ink is drying. So try to keep moving quickly. I try to color in sections at a time. So if I'm doing her top lip, or under her nose, or under her chin, I'm going to move as fast as I can in that section before I go to the next section. So here I can drop a shadow here, a little bit here, a little bit under her collarbones, under her arm where I just put that pencil. Everywhere that I think a shadow will be, I will drop this first. Like with the pencil and the gesture drawing, you keep the pen light, you're barely touching the page, and you're moving quickly. The more you practice, the easier this will become, because you'll get used to using the mediums. I suggest you practice in the beginning, because the more that you practice, the easier it gets for you, but also the more that you practice, the more your own personal style will emerge. Because when you first start to draw, you may be looking at other people's drawings or listening to what your art teacher has to say, but eventually you're going to make up your own ideas about what a face looks like, what hairstyles you like, what your body proportions are and your figure type, your coloration, and the more you do this, the more you will develop your own style. No one can teach you your style. It's just hiding there inside of you, and the only way it comes out is through practice. So that's basically my shadow there. So as you can see, she's already starting to look a little more dimensional, but if I add now the medium tone to it and minimize the white, she will definitely look a little more 3D and will stand off the page even more. I'm going to take this lighter color and I'm going to run over everything I've just done with the dark, but I'm also going to fill in areas and leave a little bit of white for highlight. I can leave a highlight here on her cheekbone. I can leave a highlight here on her neck and her collarbone, but I'm basically going to run all of this over. The more you run over the colors, the more they're going to blend together. I can leave a very light highlight up her center, which will make her look very muscular. Wherever I leave white will be the so-called hot spot of her highlight, meaning that that's the brightest spot. Now I can color her hair, which there's a lot of lead left over on her. Some of this lead is blending together, so I'm actually going to pick up some of the lead off of her hair with this eraser.